Welcome to the Gray State Revolution. The Forbidden Ones are waking up. Now it's time to invoke a new revolution to the socialist scam to take over America and discover what it will take and what we can actually do about it to conquer the left. Direct from Ridge Runner Studios, here is your host, David Big Dave Ezel.
Hey. Good evening, everybody. How are y'all doing this evening? I trust everybody's had a good weekend this weekend and enjoyed their families. I worked all weekend and I enjoyed my family's being visited. How is the world treating you out there? Are you finding food just a little bit higher? Gas is going down on one side, but it's not on the other. You ever wonder why that is? Why are they keeping, if regular gas prices are going down, why is diesel not going down? Is that so they can keep getting your money at the store shelf instead of the gas tank? So you're not near as caught up with it because you kind of just expect the prices of food to keep going up? I mean, it's starting to look like a whole entire plan now, isn't it? I mean, starve them out. Keep them from being able to travel, which means they can't work, right? And then we'll implement this woke society. And if you say something wrong, you're doxxed. If you do something wrong, you're doxxed. If you don't agree with the left, you're doxxed. And it's not really even the left. I mean, it's not. These are not leftists. These are socialists. These are extreme leftists. These are your AOCs and your Talibs and the Do-Nothing Congress that trying to control what you do. It's an apartheid of sorts. Anything to keep you down and make you divided so you don't discuss. Anything to keep you from discussing, say, the Second Amendment. That keeps you discussing, let's say, why Congress keeps getting raises while the people out here do not. Let's say there's very few things that bring people together. But the things that do bring people together are the little things, not the big things. See, nobody's really cared about which pronoun you're using when they're trying to determine whether they got enough money to buy food and get to work. Or to buy food and will they have enough to get their medications. See, the last bastions of freedom are walking around thinking they can do nothing. But there's a surprise. A big surprise that's happening all over social media. Everybody talks amongst the TikTok doxing and stopping, and Facebook doxing and stopping, and Twitter doxing and stopping, and it's not doing anything but creating people who keep doing it again. Because now they've realized, they're worried about what we're saying. They're worried about how we're feeling. They know it's coming to the ballot box. They're still trying to do everything they can to create a virus, but they know if they try, there will not be just a uprising, there will be a revolt. See, everybody is over the mask. Everybody is over the isolation. Everybody is over the dumbassness that came out of this last 2 years. Well, 3. They took advantage of a situation with previous administration, you see, and tried to start then because they knew they didn't have all that time, and they knew Joe wasn't good but for one term if he made it all the way through. Now, I cannot diagnose. All I can tell you is symptomatically, by the book, our president has got dementia. Go look at all the symptoms. Just look them up. Just pick one. I would pick Tusk or Brave browser to do my searches now, because all of the big ones, Google and Fetch, and forgot what the other ones are, Yahoo, and all of those are leaning you where they want you to go. Tusk and Brave, you can search and find the articles. And I know that it says it's free-leaning and independent, but they're still right-leaning. They're conservative-leaning search engines. But you'll get, if you go look something up in Google, look up the Communist Manifesto in Google, and then open the Brave browser or open Tusk, and then put the same thing in. See which, and then compare your search pages. And then you tell me what you think. My email of the show's in here. It's Ridge Runner Studios at Proton Mail. Or you can go to the Gray State Mafia on Facebook or in TikTok and leave a message. I'm on my 4th account now on Gray State Mafia. The 3rd account, I posted 4 videos and 1 community guidelines they wouldn't restore. And it was a good video. I took pride in that video. If you've ever watched the movie V for Vendetta, all I did was do the last, say, minute where he's standing at the top of the building directing the 1812 Overture. And they said that was violent extremism and hateful ideology. And hateful ideology and violent extremism to who? In case anybody didn't know, I mean, that's where the big frontline war for censorship's happening right now is on TikTok. And it's kind of funny because as much I think they're finally giving in, we figured out their algorithms and figured out their doxing methods and mechanisms, and we're starting to use that against them. They're having a hard time keeping on. So if they don't like it, they just shut your account out, and then we just create another one. For every one they take out, everybody creates 2 or 3, and it's hard for the algorithm to keep reading that. And we keep reposting, so keep reposting all the videos you see and mess up the algorithm for the FYP. I did get verification this week that last week's repost campaign worked. Every video that's coming up on people's FYP now is the MAGA movement. And you can call it a cult if you want to. You can call it treasonous activity if you want to, but it's not treasonous activity if it's a law written about it, and there's a law written about what's going on here. And I'm not talking about local civil codes that run the cities either. I'm talking about the law, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. All your rights and privileges guaranteed as a federal system is there. And once you violate one of those, like, I don't know, let's pick one. Let's do the First Amendment. That was the Democrats' big thing for years. So let's use that. Freedom of speech is still freedom of speech. It doesn't matter which side you're on. And the people that's become the last bastion of freedom in this country are the people from every party that realize this is not a government anymore, it's a regime. Yes, you heard me correctly. Not a government, a regime. A regime makes you mandate stuff. A regime takes things away from you. And the guise of the greater good. This is a regime. We'll get to a lot of other stuff. I'm going to re-review a bunch of things you already know. But we're going to talk about the real folks. It's the last bastions of freedom. I'm going to give you a whole sector, the public service sector. And it's not the police. And it's not the military. It's going to shock you who it is. But we're going to get a word from our sponsor right now, and then I'll come back with the last bastions of freedom.
Do you have a friend or family member you're having trouble buying a gift for? You just can't find the right gift for the person who has everything? Then go to Rockin' Magnolia Customs, a place where you can pick out and design the perfect gift for that special someone. That's rockinmagnoliacustoms.com, or find them on Facebook at Rockin' Magnolia Customs.
And that's Rockin' Magnolia Customs. There's no G in Rockin', and Customs is always spelled with a K. RockinMagnoliaCustoms.com. She does some really, really good work. Wish y'all would go check her out and order something from her. She's something else. She is a content creator like no other, and I appreciate her being a sponsor of my show. Everybody knows the last 2 years in the healthcare field has been horrendously hard and horrible. Nurses have quit by the hundreds of thousands. I would pretty much say we're probably closer to 1 million by now, since this whole thing started. And the reason we're there is because of the abuse of the system that's been going on for so long. Healthcare is always the champagne taste and beer budget statement. That's how healthcare has always been. Everybody that gets sick thinks they deserve $1 million treatment. And we will do our best to give you the best treatment we can give you, but you can't do that with what they're laying on the healthcare industry now. They made nurses and healthcare workers all over this country complacent with what they were doing under the guise of protecting the public, because the healthcare field doesn't matter if you work in the kitchen, it doesn't matter if you work in the housekeeping division or the general maintenance division. The nurses, the phlebotomist, computer technicians, IT guys. Everybody that works in the healthcare field does it because their desire to help somebody else. And the pay is constant, but that's secondary, really. People in the healthcare field do it to help people. Now, then comes along a pandemic, and they basically told us that we really didn't have a choice. We were under disaster protocol, and that since they moved nursing over into the public sector, which was fine, they'd done that during Katrina and right after Katrina. Since we just passed the anniversary, that's how Katrina and the nursing public service ties in. And the pandemic, they manipulated nurses into thinking they were really doing something, when now, in hindsight, it's always 2020. Remember that. I do remember that. But now that we step back as healthcare workers and we look back on what we've done, that we realize that it wasn't anything worse than the annual flu. As a matter of fact, it probably wasn't as bad as the annual flu. Now, I can't think of anything worse than not being able to taste something and having vomiting and diarrhea. Oh, wait, I can, a toothache and an earache and pneumonia. Now, I'm not saying that COVID don't cause serious illness. I've worked in the healthcare field. I'm a nurse. So I see that there is types of COVID in people with pre-existing conditions that get real, real sick and die. But they do that with the flu, and they do that walking. But you made healthcare workers complacent in your plan. Until we weren't. Now, the general public doesn't know this, and apparently the government doesn't know anything, so let me lay a little truth here on you. We will give you leeway. Nursing, healthcare people will give you some leeway because we understand there's a real life that we all have, then there's a facade of the life we live. And when nurses started speaking out, they started losing their jobs. Now, we were fortunate enough to keep working through all this pandemic, but a lot of people did not, and we understood that, you see. But we also liked having our jobs because it was going to continue on. But the masking, the stuff we knew was not healthy. Nobody listened to. Now, science has proven us right and proven a lot of people right. And the conspiracy theorists, I think the score now this week's 18-0 since the CDC put ivermectin on their list as a possible treatment. Folks, ivermectin, in my opinion, when we sit back and look at everything it does, that is the potential money, that is the potential item used to heal. We're not talking about a treatment because we all know that treatment means you just continue to do something to keep raking in the money because there's no money in healing people. Right? So we do know that. We know that's how it is. We sit back and are allowing things to interfere with our public lives. So we become the last bastions of freedom, and we realize that. Let me give you how and explain it to you. If you take the gross domestic product in this country and you break it down into 5 categories, you have to have food, clothing, and shelter. So that covers 10% of the gross domestic product, roughly. Then you got to have all the essential services of a country. That's where everything else is. That'd be the biggest one of the things. The 5th one, to keep all of them other going, to keep the farmers alive and well so they can grow our food, and the construction workers alive and well so they can build our houses. Keeping people alive so they can go make us fabric, clothes, stuff like that. And then the transportation sector, the military sector, and all that. There's 4. The one that makes all of them run is the healthcare sector. So that's 20% of each section. There's 5. That's how it works. So 20, 5 of them is 100%. And this was a failed attempt, folks, at a takeover of the healthcare industry. What better way than to stress the system so hard it ruptures? And that's what they're doing. Nurses realize that, and we're fighting them at every corner. In the meantime, we've getting treated now like the veterans coming home from Vietnam War. Because everybody wants to holler about, oh, you were in on it. No, we weren't in on it. We were forced to be in on it. There's a difference. It's called a paycheck. It's called liking to eat, liking to have clothes to wear, liking to be able to not really have the worries. And I just hate to say it like that because people do, but not to have as many worries. Because we're getting screwed in the healthcare system too. Because everybody thinks we're making big money, and we're not. We're not. Now we've got nurses dropping dead and getting fungal infections in their lungs. I'm waiting on some information I've requested from a drug company. There's a specific drug used in treating fungal infections of the lung and liver and stuff like that. it's basically a chemo for fungus. And I've asked to see, I want to know what the production of it is, because they only produce them in small batches. It's a specialty medicine, and I want to see how much they produce prior to the pandemic and post-pandemic. And we'll start getting those numbers in, and then you'll start to see if masks are healthy or not. Because it's going to take a long time for stuff that they're talking about brewing ain't going to be cleared up in a year's time or 2 years' time. It's going to take 5 to 10 years to see the long-term effects of what's going on, plus including the immunization. So nurses realize this, and nurses have gone to battle. We have fought every change the government has had. We've been vocal about it. Nurses have sued hospital industries and won over the mandates that the government made the nursing homes and the hospitals do. Nurses are going to win lawsuits because they made these other companies violate the Constitution under the guise of the federal government is here to help us. They were not here to help us. There's too many variables in healthcare for them to control. You can automate almost every other sector of society, but you cannot automate healthcare. You can to a degree, but then that's it. Then it requires humans. Humans think. Humans, not all of them think well, and not all of them think right. A lot of them don't think, or a lot of them think that they're thinking, but they're only being led by the two fingers in their nose, pulling them around, telling them what to do, and they're just too proud to say it. When the shots came out, and they talked about the different kind, and I kept waiting for the Janssen to come out, because if I was going to get one, I wasn't going to get a DNA changer, and that's what this was. There's proof that it's changing in the liver. There's documented proof that it is. I have to say that for my sponsors. But that's a prime example. But so nurses, and I was waiting for the Johnson & Johnson shot. So, and I got it because I like to keep working. And it was the least that I had to worry about. It was a viral vector shot. It was only going to be in my body for about 6 weeks. It didn't carry, in my opinion, as many side effects as the other possibly could, even though they weren't known then, because it's still just a study drug. At least I took some solace that know that Johnson & Johnson had been looking into the SARS COVID that hit Japan a few years before this crap hit us. So they did have some research already on ground. Dead research, I think, by this time, but it was still there to draw from and draw better conclusions from. And it was a better choice now that we found out that it is, that the percentage damage rate is like 4 compared to the other two where it's like 25 or 26 or 28 or something like that on their damage rate. So it did prove to be a better thing now. Nurses realized this and they started calling for it. But then the government said, no, don't take it. We're going to pull it off the market because you're going to have to get this one. Now, why? Why? Nurses started asking why. Nurses started getting fired over the word why, which made other nurses question why. And then it got to the point there's so many nurses quit, we can question why, and they're really not going to say anything. They're going to get mad at us, but they really can't do nothing now because they have to have the nurses to keep the beds open. Not keep the buildings open, folks, just to keep the beds open. Hospitals are shutting floors down because they don't have enough nurses to cover the beds. Because if they did, they would fill it on up. And the reason they keep saying they keep turning folks away is they don't have the nurses to work in a trauma center. The government has stressed the healthcare side so hard right now that people are having to make decisions, life and death decisions, which hospital to go to, while they're driving there to save somebody's life. It is this type of thinking and this type of thing, when you look at it, you can tell that the government is trying to take over healthcare. Stress the system so hard it ruptures. And then you have to send in military nurses, 99 Whiskeys and 99 Charlies and military nurses in there, 91 Bravo or whatever it is, and get them some help to keep the hospital beds open. And when you interject the military nurses into the system, then they've taken it over. Nurses understand this. These travel companies took advantage of the situation. I don't blame them. We are a capitalist society. This is something the government created, and the government ended up paying for end around. I'm sure it ended up in a lot more pockets before it got to the hospitals than the money actually ended up in the pockets of the people that received the grants and stuff. So nurses have been standing up and doing it. The next bastion of freedom came from this administration themselves. They created this next bastion of freedom. These are the freedom fighters, and I call them that as a term of endearment. When they said, when Joe Biden said the other night, there's 75 million people were extreme terrorists in this country. 75. He took a whole group of people and called them terrorists. He didn't just wake up the right. He woke up the left. And then he woke up everybody in the middle. Now, there's a faction, of course, in every country that think that, socialism is the answer. And the problem with socialism, in the words of Margaret Thatcher, was you always run out of other people's money. And they're going to always be there. You're going to always have socialists in your countries. That's just, it's a theory and thought. It's been proven not to work over and over and over, but they still think they can make it work. And they can't, because it just don't work. It does for a little while, but then you run out of other people's money to spend, and then it don't work no more. And these companies took advantage. I get it. Everybody got woke up. I get it. What they were not expecting, they have fooled themselves into thinking that the 81 million votes that was made up, half of them, at least, if not a third of them, the evidence is starting to mount. Once there's a pattern, it's not a pattern. There's no coincidences. Once there's a pattern, it's true. I've said before, 2,000 Mules didn't say to me that they did it. It said that there was an opportunity for it to happen. Even if it wasn't true, they've proven that it can be done, number one. Number two, that tells me that both sides are doing it. Not just one side, both sides are doing it. You have that coupled with the speech Biden gave, and people started thinking, hey, if you go back and you look, like here's what happened to my third account on TikTok. I took a picture of Joe Biden during his speech. I found online a picture of Hitler in the same position, in front of the same looking building. The only difference was it had the Nazi eagle on top and the Nazi flags draped on each side of a red building. And Joe Biden stood in front of a green screen in front of a red building. Now, if y'all don't see the coincidences and the funny that I put on there about do you plagiarize much, that's what I put up there. That got my account taken down. It got not just one account taken down, my main account. It got my second account on an account warning, which I don't use that nothing but for podcast activities. And then the other one is already an account warning. And I just got notified a few minutes ago that my fourth one, I hadn't even posted but 2 videos I've already posted on a previous page that didn't get cited for anything. I've already got a community guidelines violation for harassment. But that's fine. I don't care. The whole point is knock me down and I keep getting up. Pretty soon, you're going to keep knocking me down. It's not going to hurt to be knocked down anymore. I'm just going to do it out of habit. When folks start doing stuff out of habit, like now nurses are doing out of habit, because nurses have to sugarcoat stuff at work and we get sick of it. That's why when nurses leave, they are cold. Some of them. That's why when nurses leave, and all accounts, when nurses leave, they want to go have a good time. So we don't have to be sugarcoating outside, and we won't. The politicians can't handle this anymore. The people Joe Biden created from this speech that became constitutionalists overnight. Once they started seeing all these pictures pop up and they remember what Joe Biden looked like. Now, here's a funnier part. I translated Biden's speech into German. Folks, he used the same flexion exercises as Hitler did. And I don't know how they got him to do it. I don't know if it was pre-recorded or whatever, because he was in front of a green screen, right? So, I don't know if it was set up that way or pre-recorded with somebody that sounds like. I don't know. There's all these theories out there. I don't know what to believe. This is what I do believe. I believe these people are so caught up in the socialists, all these heroes they've got, Stalin, Lenin, Hitler, Mussolini, Jong-un, all these heroes they've got. And then try to figure out, well, if all these socialist people are heroes, then why ain't Xi and the Russian guy, shit, and my brain funny, Putin, why ain't they his heroes? Why ain't they being their heroes? They're all socialists. That they want to make them the enemy because it convinces the people that used to not be a real middle. They used to be right and left. And there was a few people in the middle. Now you've got probably 20% of the Democrats and 20% of the Republicans make up 40% of the total electorate, and 60% are now independent, right-leaning and left-leaning. What you have is the original state of America where there's a group of people in the middle, and then you've got your classic liberals, your classic Democratic liberals, your blue dog Democrats. And they're now all figuring out who they are. We all know who we are now, and their government is scared to death. And it worked against them. Everything's worked for them so far. Slowly, slowly, slowly. For some reason, it's being pushed now hard. If you sit back and just take all of your personal feelings out of it and just look at it for what it is, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see that they've slowly dumbed down this country. If you're 50 years or let's say 55 to 35 to 55, think about your education and think about what you're seeing with your kids' and grandkids' educations now. I hated reading. I don't think I've seen kids carrying the Scarlet Letter around in a long time, or The Catcher in the Rye, or Catch-22, or any of the classic literature pieces you had to read in school. I haven't seen them carrying a book. And I mean, when I say that, I'm talking about on their computers they bring home. I've never heard them say, I've got to read this and sit down and read it. Because they're not reading anymore. Hell, we don't even teach cursive anymore. So we've slowly dumbed down. That's why the Department of Education needs to go. Needs to go. We have dumbed down the country real slow over time because we became complacent. You've got very few people fighting for the people in this country. You've got a certain amount of people that's going to stay quiet. You've got a certain amount that's going to be vocal. And then you got people in the middle. You don't know where the hell they are. Until September the 1st when Biden made this speech. It woke people up. I didn't think it would wake up. I had a friend. He's a classic liberal. He's a traditional blue dog Democrat. There's some things we do agree on. There's most things we don't agree on. But we do have some common ground. Like he's a big 2A guy. He's a Democrat, but he don't believe you need to come get his guns. I'm the same way. So, hey, look, that's a major issue, right? He don't believe in the flooding of the border. It's a way to take over. That's also backfiring, and I'll tell y'all how that's working too. But you've got all these people that finally decided, but this ain't just for them. You taking half of the country. You've only said 81 million voted for Biden, 75 million voted for Trump, according to their numbers. How much you believe is up to you, not me. That's what information's out there, right? So that's 74 million people ain't got that much money. There's 81 more million other people, and there's going to be 87 armed IRS agents. Now, they started seeing everything for what it was. And one thing we all have in common is, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter about the civil codes these states have and the civil codes that the cities have. At the end of the day, it comes about the law. It comes about the original law of the land. Because what we all had to fall back on is the Constitution. Now, they have gone to the point now in this woke society where people are realizing, I liked the woke society part of it, but what they're doing now is not right. See, now they're trying to make pedophilia normal. If that's not a sure sign of not just sick, twisted people, these are people in your government, your local governments, your middle range governments, and then your federal government. Not all of them, but most all of them. There'll be very few that comes out of anything. There's a reason why they're keeping the Epstein journal locked. There's a lot of people in that book. There's a lot of names on that list that are the money rollers, we'll say. Everybody knows it. If it wasn't, they would have let it out. If it would have been something the left was against, they would have let it out. But they are so for trying to make pedophilia normal, everybody knows this. And everybody's, who's on the list? Must be somebody from the left on there. Yeah, it is. I've been privy to information I probably shouldn't be privy to. It's not going to be good, folks. At all. But the Constitutionalists came about, and in just a few hours, I started seeing all these nurses that I knew changing their name, changing their nicknames on TikTok to 2ARN. Nurse Patriot. Battle Hog Patriot RN. And then it hit me. The biggest bastion of freedom in this country have been the current administration. I believe it was Maya Angelou that said, when somebody tells you who they are, believe them. It happened. And people listen to her. Like I said, there's always a few idiots. But he sat there and basically said, anybody that don't agree with our administration is an enemy of the state. And when he realized it was in general terms, my buddy, he's a good friend. He's just politically we're different. I saw him on the 3rd, I believe, when I went back to work and saw him on the 3rd. Y'all, he was generally worried at this point. I've never seen him like this. Since election night, I've never seen him like this. But he's worked through all of this medical stuff, right? He's watched it happen. He didn't want to believe it, so he didn't. That speech, he said that made him realize that he wasn't part of a group anymore. See, the parties are built for that. Parties is what George Washington said would destroy the country, and that's where we're at. People are pulling out of parties. They're talking about the million people that switch from Democratic to Republican. That's just what we know. I'm going to tell y'all what else is happening. When I work, I'm like over 50 miles from home, so I stay in hotels. And I've met some illegals working. They were on the job working. Got to talking to them one night in the last couple of weeks. And then I asked them sorry about your situation, because I don't know what their situation was. I just know that they were scared when I walked up. I mean, they're always they're running scared, right? It's not right. It's not human to have somebody feeling that way. I understand that they're probably illegal. I don't care right now, because this other part is where I like to fail out in the parking lot. We got to talking about the situation in America, and I got to talking to him. He said, I just came from this. And I said, what? He said, I just came from this. I came here because they telling us that America is taking us in. Okay, somebody's telling them. Maybe that one, it's got plausible deniability because she is a border czar, didn't go to the border. And when she did, it was a joke. They're coming across the border. And everybody thinks they're going to vote Democrat. They're not. The ones that I talked to said, well, if they'll let us vote, we're voting for Trump. Oh. I said, well, that's if he runs. And they said, no, they feel like, they've been in a third world country, folks. They've been under a regime. They're watching. He said, because this ain't what America's about. An illegal alien humbled me in a parking lot. A nurse that I work with, who is opposite politically of me, humbled me at work. And made me realize they're trying to fundamentally change the face of this country, but I don't think what's happening is what they had in mind. If you're going to do revolution, a real revolution, if you want to be powerful, you do it silently. You don't make yourself the focus and center of attention. You do it silently because it grows better. It's a better way to message. You don't put anybody in the limelight. You do as much behind the scenes as possible. And because you're able to keep a secret really good, you get to be more powerful because more people will let you in their circles. And you can build your whole system if you're going to fundamentally take over something, not what they're doing. And this speech single-handedly changed the outlook of Americans. You can tell by the tone that it turned on these social media pages. I could tell by the tones of people that talk to me now on a regular daily basis about politics. I've got more questions about historical politics because that's what I do, generally. I can tell you that Washington warned against the two-party system. I can tell you that James Monroe had an era of good feeling because the party system collapsed on one side. I can tell you that Everything that's happened in America has been caused by this party system. They're fooling you. They fooled us all. They made us complacent. Then they put us at war with each other. It tried it in the 60s really big with racism. And it truly was a racism. There was an issue with it. It sure was. Nobody's here to deny that. I grew up on the people that lived the tail end of that generation. And I will tell you, I've heard a lot of stuff in my life. I've seen a lot of stuff in my life because I grew up in Mississippi, in Neshoba County, and I hate to say that. I want you all to understand. Do you understand that is where Mississippi burning took place? That's where the 3 civil rights workers were murdered. Was in the county I grew up in. I know exactly where it happened, what road it was on. I know right where it was. I'm not proud of that. I'm just telling you that so you'll kind of understand what I'm about to say. The government used the race issue in the 60s to keep everybody separated. They used it in the 80s. In the 70s. About the gas lines. There's racism going on there. In the 80s, it wasn't just good enough that we still had some leftover racism going on. Pretty heavy, I'm not going to deny that. Then they made their little race baiters, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson. They made them the focus to keep everybody separated. And sometime between 1995 and 2005, something happened. People's idea about race relations changed. Wasn't good enough. Wasn't good enough. Everybody fought for the change, but when the change happened, they started fighting against it. So they kept us fighting against each other all these years, using every single thing they can. And now they were using politics. It was working like a charm. We got a 24/7 news cycle. You've got a podcaster on every corner. You're listening to one if you're listening to me. And then Joe Biden gave a speech on September the 1st that changed everybody's idea. It changed from everybody realizing, I can remember something about this happening in Germany, I think, in World War II. Ain't that what they did to the Jews? All you had to do in Biden's speech is change the word MAGA Republican to Germanic Jews. The Germanic Jewish Society. That's what Hitler said. And now Joe Biden has said it. And who do you have protecting you? You got nurses trying to keep them from taking over health care any way they can, whether they realize that's what they're doing or not. They were forced into it because their belief systems. They didn't care anymore, because if you fire me from this job, I can go before I get in my car from where I'm working. I can have a job before I sit down in my car. And all of these nurse managers and stuff that are reporting these nurses to the board, eventually you're going to fix it to where the nurse is going to get the boards out of the way too. And you act like you can't. There, it's coming. Harassment goes a long way. Nurses, we've already been talking, we know. So we're just going to let you play your game long enough. Just like those 3 nurses got $10.1 million in that mandate settlement. You don't think it ain't going to start happening all over. It's going to be not just in the healthcare field. See, all these constitutionalists are out here now. All these people know now. Most of the laws we've become complacent with, some of them, if they're challenged, they are unconstitutional. The government knows we know it. They don't want us to do anything about it because it feeds their pocket. And that's the end of that discussion. When you've got people crossing party lines from talking to each other and actually having real conversations, which is what's happening right now every single day, They're having real conversations. Okay, well, that's what you believe. I don't necessarily agree with that. In the meantime, what you hear on the news is abortion, Trump, Mar-a-Lago, all of this other stuff to keep you looking at the left hand while they got the right hand balled up and they put a roll of dimes in it to punch you right in the jaw. And now everybody's like, okay, well, if you'll watch that left hand, I'll watch that right hand. We're going to talk to each other, and then we're going to try to keep them from hitting everybody. Then the government's caught. So they stopped trying to do it in secret. They're just saying the quiet parts out loud now. Now they don't care what you think. Now they think they got you so caught up and so fooled. And you've become complacent. And you've done it time and time and again in this country. I'm just as guilty. We've become complacent in this country. And now it's up to us to fix the problem we caused. Generation X is the who gives a shit generation. It's true. And we really haven't done a whole lot, folks. Not Gen X. I mean, we've done things. We've made differences. But we still didn't give a shit. And now we got to clean our mess up. We got to re-educate all these people that we don't live in a democracy. We live in a federal, elected, constitutional republic. That's only supposed to really meet 3 months out of the year. During the cold, wet, rainy seasons when you can't farm. See, people are not wanting to go back. People are wanting to get rid of. So we can have back. Not go back. So we can have back the 1980s era again. So we can have back who gives a shit about politics. Let's just do our thing. Let's go have our kids go together and play on the monkey bars. Flip on the merry-go-round. When we sitting talking around a table drinking coffee and tea and beer and sitting by a fire. And not judging somebody on who they voted for in the last election. Not judging somebody for what they think about a certain political issue when it doesn't matter if our kids are playing t-ball together. Our kids are on the same football team. Our kids are in the band together and we're all having to travel to the ball games. I'd rather have an argument about which college football team is the best than worrying about who do we think's going to be better for this country. We are at a bad time. We are at a crossroads in our history. We've got 2 cycles to save this country. Because you can't change but half the government in the midterms anyway. We've only got 2 cycles to change this country. Fundamentally change the entire country. Everybody's so focused right now. They're not seeing the long-term goals here. Now we got people that realize the Constitution is not only our law, it's our way out of this bullshit we've allowed ourselves to get caught in. What I'm about to say is not a very popular opinion. Trump was an outsider in 2016. Trump is not an outsider now. I love Trump's policies. But Trump is now a politician. I like Trump better when he's off the cuff. I like Trump better when he tells it like it is. Because, see, he's still representing a party. I've been reading articles. All these left-leaners, article people, which most of them are all writing about this Article 5. Oh, Article 5, they're going to do a Constitutional Convention. We got to be worried about that, worried about that, worried about that. It's the first time I've heard anybody in the news media talk about the actual Constitution, and there might be a problem after November. There might be a problem after they swear them in January. Because people starting to read the Constitution know how it works. People starting to read what Article 5 is and what it's meant and intended for, and they're realizing, oh my God, there's some states that's already passed this. How many do we got to have? 36. How many Republican governors are there? Go look. You might fall out when you see. Because remember, they're parties. Don't matter if they moderate Republicans or rhinos. They're still Republicans, and they're going to do what the Republican tells them to do. Those are numbers you need to go look up. And then you'll see what they're really worried about. And when the constitutionalists all realize, oh, that means we got all the power. Yes, we do. See, our forefathers were young. But when the Boston Tea Party happened, and all of the forefathers started being distinguished out, they were all the smart kids, folks. They were all under the age of 30, except for a few. Patrick Henry, I think, was like 38 when the Declaration of Independence was signed. He was the oldest. He was the elder. I think Sam Adams was 18 or 19 or 20, something like that. And when you think of the forefathers, you're looking at those old men, because they want you to think old men, because it has a persona that goes with it. When I see the founding fathers, I see these young, buxom guys with some nuts on them. They weren't taking no bullshit from a king. That's what's happening now. The American people have woke up and realized they think they're king running us, and we don't like it. And you've got the two groups of people I've talked about tonight, the healthcare field, healthcare workers, and the constitutionalists. And the people that realize nobody has a party anymore. It's us versus them. It's us against them. It's us, the American public, against our own government we put there. It's us against the lobbying groups that we put there. I want to wish everybody a good night. Tune in next week. Take care for everything. Everybody watch out for each other. If you come across a good deal, you know somebody that needs it, get it. Y'all can swap later. This is Big Dave. Good evening from the Gray State and the Gray State Revolution.
This has been another episode from the Gray State Revolution. Join David again next week for a look into the past to see the future. Remember, when tyranny becomes law, resistance becomes duty. Download episodes from your favorite platform every week and follow Big Dave on TikTok at The Gray State Mafia.